We start, though, tonight with Carlton and their woes. This is not the team that we were promised. The co-captain, Sam Doherty, said as much in the pre-season.
It's probably been the first time that I've been in media that I've been able to come out and say that we're expecting to play finals, and that's a good sign. We feel like we've got the game style and the list to be there.
Unfortunately, they're nowhere near it at the moment, 2 and 3, but it was a loss that got everyone talking on the weekend. Kane Cornes, you've been a critic of many areas of their club. Where is the problem in this Carlton team?
I think as we spoke about 2 weeks ago, Hutchie, they need to work out when is the right time for them to challenge for a premiership. Is it this year? Well, no, it's not. It's completely not. So I think we need to work out which players are going to be there for their next premiership, and we need to find that out by opportunity. And right now they're not giving the opportunity to the players that I think need the midfield minutes. And if we look at these players that are...
You're saying they're roadblocks, these guys?
Well, they are, Hutchie, because they're not going to be in their next premiership. So let's find out and give an extended run of the young players that they've got. And O'Brien and Stocker will play this week. Can Petrevski-Seton play in the midfield? Because I can tell you what, he's not a defender. We've got to work out if Dow can play. Give him 10 games in a row, because it doesn't really matter with where they're at. Is he give you more than Curnow? O'Brien, we need to find out. Stocker, we said, and the others I'm not sure about. Sam, you can speak more on them.
I think you're being incredibly harsh on Nunes and Gibbons in that list. I mean, the other ones have been pretty good players for a long time now.
Do you think Gibbons is a premiership?
Nunes plays every week and is consistent every week, and Gibbons has come from the VFL, so I think we need some perspective there, and has a crack.
No, I'm not, nothing against him, what he gives. I'm not questioning his effort, but is he a premiership player?
There is 15 things wrong more with Carlton than Jack Nunes.
Do you know if Paddy Dow is an AFL player?
Not yet.
Why not? Why not?
Well, because he hasn't been given the opportunity in the midfield.
That's my point.
I completely agree with that. But it doesn't mean that we have to throw out everything. I agree with you.
Someone has to come out for the opportunity to get...
Yep, this is a raging debate. Is it the recruiting, or is it the opportunity that the players that have been drafted have been given? Because
I personally think they'd get opportunities if they were good enough, and they get some opportunities, these guys, and they don't show it. So
it's recruiting, Lordo?
I think so.
But Lordy, they don't get enough time. And when was the last time you saw Lockie O'Brien play a full 4 quarters on the wing, or Paddy Dow play a full game in the midfield, and not forward pocket, back pocket?
Paddy Dow's not a great runner, right? And so he struggles to play midfield time. That's the reason he's not in there.
I struggle to hear that and accept that. We heard all pre-season long that Paddy Dow had an unbelievable pre-season.
Yeah, he has an impacting forward.
And yet he's not fit enough to play in the midfield?
That's the problem out of Carlton. You hear too many things. They say too many things, and we've just heard examples of that there. So it's got to be recruiting then.
Yeah,
so
because that list didn't really excite me, though, the kids coming through. You wouldn't trust Sam Petrevski-Seton anywhere near your midfield at the moment.
Have we seen enough yet to know?
What's that?
Have we seen enough yet to know?
Well, I think Hutchie,
in pure midfield minutes, like those guys, most of those guys weren't drafted as half-backs or as kind of starvation corner half-forwards, were they?
But I don't think when Petrevski-Seton was drafted, I could imagine, I don't know, I'd love to know where Shea Bolton was at, and he's become a great midfielder, so possibly, but I'm sure they get challenged hard. They brought in Andrew Russell, who was, on big dollars to be that man, but I just don't see great runners in that group. I looked at the midfield on the weekend, so Walsh does his thing every week. Patrick Cripps is next. We fall to Zach Williams with 22 disposals. Then it does fall to guys like Michael Gibbons. So it just shows how weak they are through that area. But none of those guys coming through, I think, are showing enough.
So you think this is less? You think this is less David Teague and more the list that they've put together?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or it's a development, one or the other.
Or it's opportunity. David's been very loyal to the players that helped him get the role after he was. Lordy's one of his great traits as a coach.
What's your take on this right now, Hutchie?
It'll be tested.
What do you think David Teague needs to do to keep his job for 2022?
I don't think he's safe as a coach, but he can't be
safe if they miss the 8.
He'll be second guessing whether the loyalty that he's paid those more experienced players.
So is he selecting the team out of fear on that, because he knows what he's going to get from Curnow, so he's more likely to get to the 8 with that, but it's a stopgap for them. They're roadblockers because they're not there for the next premiership.
If Stocker plays on the weekend, surely he plays in the midfield and they can find out and have a look at him. Cripps is an interesting one. You've been quite critical of Cripps in the way that he's gone about things. He's certainly getting enough for the footy. What's your take on his game on the week?
Firstly, I want to say how much I admire Patrick Cripps for the way that he plays, but I think he can be a better leader and he can do things like that, like give the football. And I said over the weekend, and I'll back over it, if I was Patrick Cripps, I'd be having a coffee with Trent Cotchin and working out how he became the leader that he has become. Because right now, we remember players and what they do in finals and in premierships. I think he is trying to be the best player on the ground every week, not the best leader. He's got a 27% win-loss ratio, hasn't played in a final, and that's right now unfortunately, how we're going to remember Patrick Cripps.
So I think you're being unfair on Cripps, and the Cochin comparison is a really interesting one, because I would put it to you that he only became the leader he is now when the team galvanised around him and they started being better on the field. To me, Lloyd...
No, that's not right. He was the first to reinvent. Among the first.
The end of
well, I think it happened concurrently for me, but
I'm with Kane on this. Patrick Cripps needs to reinvent himself. It's admirable what he's trying to do, but it ultimately isn't working.
But I think that's because of that they are devoid of system. I look at Sam Doherty, one of the most talented players we've seen in a Carlton jumper for a long time. He is dropping chess marks in the back line. That is not the Sam Doherty that we come to know.
Patrick Cripps is dropping chess marks, making handball errors, kicking the ball away.
I think the reason the two captains are trying to drag their players over the line, a bit like Max Gawn has done previously, is because...
Just on that, we had Jake Lever on Sports Day tonight on 3AW, and Sam asked about they're talking about being more selfless. And were you selfish last year as a group? He said, you know what it was? Everyone wanted to be the saviour. So Max Gawn would try and win a game for his team. Jack Vineyard want to win every clearance and win for his team. Petrarca would try and do this. That's all gone now, and we have to play a certain way and our role to win the team. So that comes from the top, I think, and that's where I think Nathan Fyfe, Justin Longmuir's changed what Fyfe has to do. He says you can go in the forward line for the first 15 minutes because we need others to do it. That's what brave coaching is, and that's maybe what David Teague needs to do.
And I think Luke Beveridge has done the same with Marcus Bontempelli. I know he still gets a lot of the footy, but he's more than happy to go play forward.
Cripps is going to be interesting because the contract's the backdrop to all of this. The Blues were confident earlier this month that he would sign. Kane Little, the CEO, said as much.
As I've said a few times, we're working through that process with him and we couldn't be more comfortable with where that's at. He's as invested a player as I've ever seen in a football club. And that's, I speak for myself and Teague and Brad Lloyd who've worked at multiple clubs there. So I don't think that's going to be an issue.
So that was Kane Little, Hutchie, 3 weeks ago. So 3 weeks has passed and he still hasn't signed, and there doesn't seem to be any more solid evidence that he's going to re-sign tomorrow. I spoke to his management today and they offered a very abrupt no comment, which was intriguing of itself. I think the next 4 weeks is huge for the Carlton Football Club, not just for Paddy Cripps and where they see him, but for where Cripps sees the club going.
Would you, if you were Cripps, would you want to wait and see how this team works out?
I think he's got every right to do that. As I said, he has every right for a player that has won 27% of his games and for what he's given to the club to look around and work out where the direction is. Now, it's going to be his last contract. He's going to commit long term. It's going to see him out. You'd want to know that they're on the right track, and right now you wouldn't be confident in that.
I don't know anything, but I would think he's a hold for now. You want to see how it unfolds.
And that's his call.
I would think so, yeah. David Teague, after the game, he was still positive about their entries.
Oh, look, the positive was we broke even in some of them and even more scoring shots and inside 50s. So there's bits you want to grab onto. I think at the end of the day, we had 75 chains and kicked 4 goals 11, and I think they had 72 and kicked 10 goals 1, which is the game in itself.
So if I was a Carlton member who's had equally probably the worst 20 years supporting a footy club that any club has, and I heard this after a game, this is what he's talking about, inside 50s. It's about as basic a stat as you can get, because Port Adelaide love it when the ball comes inside 50 like this. They thrive on this. So David Teague saying, yep, we won the inside 50s. These are what they look like. This is an inside 50 that he's saying they won. Do you think Port Adelaide are worried about that as an entry? That is a basic stat for him to wheel out after the game, because that's an inside 50. But did that do anything? Did that put Port Adelaide under any sort of pressure? They thrived on it. They rebounded. They intercept marked. And if he's going to pull that stat out after that performance, I'd be pretty upset as a Carlton member.
It's where Melbourne have got a lot better. Last year, they were just kicking the ball in like that, and they've improved out of sight in that department. It's what's helped them to be not lose a game so far this year. The next 4 weeks, Hutchie, we talk about how difficult it doesn't get any easier. Brisbane, Essendon, the Western Bulldogs and Melbourne. I think those 3 of those top 4 sides will be top 5 or 6 this year.
How many do they have to win of those 4, Lloyd, to stay in the hunt for September?
Oh, at least 2 of those 4. They have to take
so they're going to have to take a scalp.
Take a scalp. But I look at them. So they've lost by 25 points to Richmond, 21 to Collingwood, 28 to Port Adelaide, beat Fremantle and Gold Coast. But to me, they're a nervous side. They're a fumbly side. Defensively, they're not sound. And they're lacking work rate. So I don't know where you'd start.
A few issues there.
Yes, there's a lot of issues. And I don't know what their weapon is, Hutch. What is their point of difference? I don't think they've got one at the moment.